Well, good morning, New Ground. Pastor Mike, following up from teaching from Sunday about God wrestling with us, about Jacob wrestling the angel. I didn't get any questions really this week. More of just I got a comment about um, just liking the idea of wrestling with things, and this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, if you've been around me long enough at New Ground, I did preach on this previously. With Realistic Thomas. I think that was like one of the first sermons I gave here when I first got here. So I thought I'd just take some time just to kind of say some things, and I won't take too long today since I don't have any other questions, but just some follow-up comments. A lot of times I was taught early in my Christian journey that struggling, the grind, the moments where things don't feel like they're all together, or maybe even the times where you feel like God isn't speaking, or you're not really sure what His will is. There's all sorts of ways that people term that or decide to describe that. But early in my Christian journey, I was taught that that was a bad thing. It's almost like you start saying phrases like the light at the end of the tunnel, or once we get through this, then everything will be okay. And there's some truth to that in some aspects, but what I didn't talk about in the teaching, and one that, as I'm continuing to walk through and evaluate, because I think I've been so ingrained, is the idea of the Christian life being a journey. And we say that a lot, but what's interesting is the way we talk, the way we think about things, the way we wrestle with things. It's an issue of, as I like to call it, journey theology versus destination theology. And what I mean by that is destination theology is always about what's at the end of the tunnel, and that becomes the thing that makes you realize that you've arrived, that I'm finally there. And I find in the scriptures that a lot of this is more about the journey than the destination. It doesn't mean the destination isn't important. It doesn't mean the destination doesn't give you hope. I mean, obviously, the entire book of Revelation, in some ways, is a destination document as far as a hope, the final hope that Jesus is the King, that He is on the throne, that He is Lord, and that all the injustices and all the evil and all that stuff will be vanquished. I mean, that is a destination type of posture. So there's nothing wrong with destination, but I feel like I was taught that the journey is exclusively about destination. And what ends up happening when you do that is that churches turn into places where you've got to get, the hard times are almost sinful, or the hard times become an indicator of something that you've done wrong. And again, some of that's true. A lot, the way I live my life a lot is both and, I like to say. There's a lot of both ands in scripture. And so I don't want to, I think the dichotomous idea, so the either or, right? It's one or the other. Some people, as my professor, and he'd be very proud of me for saying this word, my professor in seminary said, we bifurcate. We make things either or. We have a dichotomy. And a lot of times it's a both and. There's a lot more gray, those kinds of things, which I find great comfort in the wrestling concept, the idea that God wrestles with us, that the story of Israel is about struggle. I mean, this Jacob story is one of the linchpin stories of Judaism that encapsulates who they are. In fact, it's one of those stories and many others that over the history of the Jews, thinking specifically about the Holocaust, I mean, it's one of those things that gave them hope. Right, so that like this struggling wrestling and crying out like, God, when are you ever going to deliver? That God never looks upon that in a negative light. And I would say that's why the encouragement is to you. Like for some of you, this is a grind, this journey that you're on, and you're just like, how do I get through this? And you say those words, and that's good. That's a natural thing to say. But the harder question is, what is God saying to me in the midst of it? And that's where the deeper work happens. And I've found in the last several years, let's say 10 to 12 years, as I've kind of reoriented my posture in this way, I guess more aggressively, there have been truths that have presented themselves much more clearly, um, and there's lots of lessons from it. But recognizing like what is God saying in the midst of the journey is very vital. Is focusing on, some people call it being fully present, and even in the midst of the grind, and that's tough, especially when you're surrounded by something stressful or circumstantial that is so overwhelming that the only thing you can see is that. And my encouragement in that's why we need the church. We need other people to come alongside us to speak those things into us, that might be destination laden or even journey laden, to help us. Somebody told me, and I don't remember where the quote came from. I've forgotten now, but I've always remembered this. Someone told me, "Never doubt in the darkness what God has already told you in the light." And so that's someone's calling me right now. Give me a second here. I'll turn him off for a second. There you go. Never doubt in the darkness what God has told you in the light, and that's hard to do in the midst of a wrestling circumstance, right? But that's why other people speak that into you, to remind you. There's a lot of remembering in Scripture, right? Reminding and remembering, altars, communion. There's all these things, right? And so it's important to have those people alongside you. So I just want to encourage you, if you're there this week or have been there for a while, that you're not alone, number one, and it's okay. I think the biggest danger part is not about wrestling with doubts or struggles or what have you, or not is it, the let me say it again. The danger is when you don't engage with wrestling and doubt, when you actually are in the midst of it and you don't wrestle through it, as far as like trying to really ask deeper questions about who God is, what He's about, what He's calling you to be in the midst. That when you don't engage with it, that's the danger. And there's some people that just disconnect, and they have their reasons, but the Scriptures are. The Scriptures is a great encouragement of a book of people who are just ordinary people who did some pretty horrible things as well, and yet the story of wrestling and struggle and even redemption in the midst of it is a beautiful thing. And so I hope that gives you encouragement today to recognize that God does wrestle with us, and it's okay to ask Him the hard questions, and it's okay if you don't hear a response or you're clouded by it at the moment, and you need other people to come alongside you. So, and maybe that's for you. Maybe you're seeing someone go through it as well, and you say maybe you need to be the person today to come alongside them to speak some truth in their lives, and just say that you're there. Lots of different applications. That's just off the cuff, since I didn't get any questions, but hope that's helpful. And we're going to wrap up the series this Sunday as we talk about Jacob and Esau reunited. That'll be it's a really interesting text, considering what we've known about both of these guys so far. It'll be a nice wrap up of the series. And again, encourage you for March 3rd on our Vision Sunday. It's a couple Sundays away. We're really excited. Lots of great stuff planned. We're already getting things lined up. Lots of stories that we're going to share, which I think are going to be very inspiring to you. They're really going to celebrate what's happened in the last 6 years of New Ground, but really propel us forward into the future of what God has for us. So I hope you'll find a way to be a part. We'll have a potluck too, so it's going to be a grand feast, all the way around on March 3rd. So hopefully you can be a part. But hope you have a great rest of the week, and look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Grace and peace.